Please welcome President and CEO of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, Joel R. Johnson.
Hello, hello, and good morning. I'm Joel Johnson, President and CEO of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. Welcome to Capitol Hill Ocean Week 2024, the nation's premier ocean conference. And we would like to open this year's conference with a welcoming from Vice Chairman Mario Harley of the Kainai Piscataway Tribe.
I'd like to welcome each of you to the historic lands of the Piscataway Indian people. We have called this land our home for over 15,000 years. If you're not familiar, our homeland exists from the Patapsco River watershed, which is currently known as Baltimore, Maryland, down the western banks of the Chesapeake Bay to where the confluence of the Potomac River, and up the Potomac River watershed all the way to the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. So all of this land that you're known as DC, Northern Virginia, and southern central Maryland is historic Piscataway lands. And as Piscataway people, we are an adaptable people, more so than the last 400 years. But part of that adaptability is to understand what's happening to our natural environment and adjust as necessary. I'm here today as a representative from the National Marine Sanctuary, one of the newest ones at Mallows Bay, Potomac River. Mallows Bay is the name associated with that property for about 80 years. Potomac River has been assigned that name for about 300 years. Before that 12,000 years before that, my people called it Pasichi Pakuk, is the land of the blending of waters. And it's a place that we would teach our next generation about change and ability to have the impacts of decisions being made at that location on our waterways. And that's the story that I wish to share with you today, is that ability to understand and adapt to change. As a youth, I spent my life learning from my ancestors, my elders. And this was a time before there was internet or encyclopedias. And I was fortunate enough to learn my culture, my history, my ceremonies, our spirituality from these individuals by sitting with them and listening to them. And that is the way that our culture was being passed from generation to generation. And today, our challenge is when our sons and daughters have earbuds in their ears and their fingers are constantly busy on their phones, how do you communicate that culture? How do you communicate that critical indigenous knowledge from generation to generation? And that's where change and collaboration comes in. We understand the role of the oysters in our homeland, the role of the beaver, the role of the fish and the trees and the plants. But not so much when we're talking about plastics and microplastics and the dredging of the waterways, what it's doing to the bottoms of our waterways and the life forms there. And that's where these kind of communication, these kind of gatherings in which ideas are being exchanged, in which assistance and help is being exchanged, collaboration with the local indigenous peoples is needed to be part of that exchange. So as you're going about your meetings and your discussions throughout this week, think about that collaboration potential. Think about educating that next generation so that for decades and centuries to come, we'll be able to work side by side here on this land known as North America, or as we call it, Turtle Island, and have the resources available to all of us, the gifts of the natural world available to all of us, and especially for those who are yet to be born. So I thank you for coming and putting forth your efforts, because it is critical in this time of need. And I ask you to keep an open mind, work with each other, find that solution. It only may be a 20% solution, but that's moving the ball forward. So I thank you for your time, for your consideration, and welcome to the lands of the Piscataway people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chairman Harley, and we will try to honor those words and to seek collaboration over the next 2 days here at the conference. Honored guests and distinguished speakers and fellow ocean advocates, to our attendees and viewers online, welcome. It is an honor to gather here with so many dedicated teachers, innovators, and champions of our blue planet. Together, we are driven by a vision of a future where our oceans and Great Lakes are thriving, sustainable, and equitable for all. This vision is powered by our collective ambition and the innovative spirit that propels us forward. And at the heart of this movement are the people, the leaders, the communities, and the cultures that have long been stewards of the sea and the waters. Our efforts to protect the ocean are not just about addressing the environmental challenges, but about tearing down systemic inequities, reversing biodiversity loss, and tackling climate change. So to face these Herculean challenges, we must lift up and connect leaders everywhere, driving change and breaking down barriers. Embracing our responsibility and service, we strive to build and support diverse alliances and communities. But let's be real, we are facing some urgent and multiple crises. Climate change, biodiversity loss, systemic inequity, all of these things cause tremendous issues, but they invigorate people to participate in the solutions. Coastal communities, both traditional and new, are often, of course, the frontline responders and most impacted by these issues. The historical relationship with the ocean makes them invaluable leaders in our fight for a sustainable future. They will be the ones to turn policy into action and make the solutions we need a reality. CHOW 2024 calls upon leaders from all walks of life to come together to drive attention and innovation and to ensure that people are at the core of ocean solutions. So throughout the week, we will explore the incredible efforts of international, national, and local communities. We will learn from traditional practices and new adaptations as we face a changing climate. We will work to save and protect species and sustain our vital relationships with the ocean. So I would like to offer a special thanks to our advisory committee for CHOW 2024 and the sponsors who have helped us to create an exceptional lineup of speakers for the week who embody a spirit of innovation, leadership, and dedication. Joining us are leaders from all walks of life, including NOAA and including Administrator Rick Spinrad, whose expertise and vision guide our national efforts in marine science and policy. Actress Bailey Bass will share her unique perspective and commitment on environmental storytelling. We also welcome artist and activist Danny Washington, whose creative voice and passion will inspire a new generation of ocean advocates, many I know who are in this room and online. A special welcome, in fact, to the youth delegations from Earth Echo, Big Blue and You, the Ocean Project, and World Ocean Day, and the Sustainable Ocean Alliance. Welcome. And in fact, we may have a photo of some of that youth delegation who have been in Washington, D.C., meeting, training, doing workshops, and preparing for their leadership of our challenges. We're also honored to have wildlife biologist Jeff Corwin, whose work in wildlife conservation has educated and engaged millions, and Leadership Award winner, Chair of the Council of Environmental Quality, Brenda Mallory. She will bring her leadership in environmental policy and equity to the table. National Geographic Explorer in Residence, Dr. Enrique Sala, will share his groundbreaking work in marine conservation and exploration. And we'll also hear from Violet Sage Walker, the chairwoman of the Northern Chumash Tribal Council. Many, many more leaders will also speak. Scientists, diplomats, youth leaders, ocean explorers. And in fact, I'm proud to say that we have one of the most diverse speaker lineups in the history of CHOW, by age, by ethnicity, by gender. This matters, folks. Having this diversity as part of this conversation is how we will tackle these issues. This event would not be possible without the generous support of our presenting and signature sponsors, and that includes NOAA, the David and Lucille Packard Foundation, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, the Walton Family Foundation, Shell and Atlantic Shores, OceanKind, the Aquarium Conservation Partnership, and one of our newest sponsors, NASA. We extend our heartfelt thanks to each of these organizations for their commitment to our oceans and our future. We would also like to thank the honorees at last night's Oceans Award Gala. Chairwoman Violet Sage Walker of the Northern Chumash Tribal Council, with special recognition of her father, the late Chief Fred Collins, White House Council on Environmental Quality Brenda Mallory, and National Geographic Pristine Seas. Your exemplary contributions and dedication to ocean conservation truly inspire us all. So together, we can forge a brighter and more sustainable and equitable future for our oceans and for our world. Let us embark on this journey this week with a shared commitment to collaboration, innovation, and the empowerment of all of our communities. Thank you all for being here and for your unwavering dedication to our ocean's future. Now, this wouldn't be Capitol Hill Ocean Week without a few special announcements, and we're going to start with a pretty exciting one about our national marine sanctuaries, and I think we have a video to share with you all. Dr. Richard Spinrad is Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and NOAA Administrator. As the leader of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's 12,000-person workforce, Dr. Spinrad provides strategic direction for NOAA's products and services to address climate change, the crisis there, fosters environmental sustainability and economic development, and he focuses on infusing equity into all aspects of the agency's work and workforce. Please welcome NOAA Administrator Dr. Rick Spinrad.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Joel, and to you and the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, along with all of the other organizers who are celebrating today and who've helped move this designation process forward. Thank you to everyone. What an amazing introduction to our nation's newest marine sanctuary, Sweet 16. Let's give a round of applause. Woo! I've got to tell you, as a native New Yorker, I am absolutely delighted that the Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary is the first marine sanctuary in the great state of New York, but not the last. Lake Ontario's maritime history spans thousands of years, from the earliest peoples to present. The first regional inhabitants, the indigenous peoples of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, developed a deep connection to the lake and its resources. NOAA acknowledges the ancestral lands that lie within the boundaries of this sanctuary, as well as all of our sanctuaries, and we're dedicated to building equitable partnerships with indigenous peoples in the stewardship of these places. Lake Ontario Marine Sanctuary also includes a diversity of nationally significant underwater assets, including archaeological sites, shipwrecks, and submerged aircraft, all of which provide a sense of place in the region's robust maritime history, as well as its cultural history. In designating this sanctuary, we've taken into account community feedback, and the programs and regulations reflect the input. I'm delighted to note that NOAA and the state of New York will co-manage this sanctuary. Partnerships and collaborations are core values of our nation's sanctuary system. The designation of Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary is the culmination of a years-long community-driven nomination and designation process. Our amazing National Marine Sanctuary team has worked with the community every step of the way, and I want to thank and acknowledge John Armour, Ellen Brody, Matt Brookhart, and our Assistant Administrator of the National Ocean Service, Nicole LeBoeuf, for all of the great work that they've done. Please give them a round of applause as well. Thank you. Sanctuaries are designed to involve community members as well, and it's a pleasure to acknowledge Bill Christ, the chair of the Lake Ontario Sanctuary Advisory Council. Finally, I want to thank and acknowledge our partners at the county and state level, including New York State's Deputy Commissioner for Historic Preservation, Daniel McKay, and Oswego Administrator Phil Church, who's long been a champion of this effort as well. Now, you're going to hear from them in a moment, but first, I have the honor of introducing a great champion for NOAA and our ocean conservation and management work, and a man I call my friend, Deputy Commerce Secretary Don Graves.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Spinrad, or I should say Rick, for that introduction. It is always a pleasure to join you to celebrate more of NOAA's amazing accomplishments, and I know that there will be a whole lot more of those. And this is a major accomplishment, not just for NOAA and the National Marine Sanctuary system, but for President Biden's America the Beautiful initiative. I grew up on the Great Lakes, specifically Lake Erie, just a little ways down the road in Cleveland from Lake Ontario, and I understand firsthand just how vital these waterways are to the local, to the regional, and to our national economies. President Biden has been a leading figure in setting out the first national-scale conservation goals for land and ocean. And under his leadership, we've seen an unprecedented expansion in the sanctuary system, with 5 more designations in process, and today's announcement pushes that mission forward. The sanctuary designation helps advance the initiative, which supports locally led collaborative conservation efforts across the country. Places like Lake Ontario are also the model for how we can advance economic growth at the same time as conservation to make our communities stronger together. Lake Ontario will join other Great Lakes sanctuaries like Thunder Bay and Wisconsin Shipwreck Coast as key drivers for creating economic opportunity and partnerships. The region has a centuries-long legacy of leadership in maritime innovation, trade, transportation, serving as a critical player in the development of East Coast cities like New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and of course westward, past Cleveland and Buffalo, Detroit, Chicago, and beyond. And the harbor in Oswego is also the oldest freshwater port in the United States. intertwining the history of the region with the history of nearly every other Great Lakes community. And being a student of history, it's important for us to remember that the Eastern Lake Ontario region has also been a host to a diverse array of events, important events in our nation's history, from, of course, military conflicts to maritime innovation and the growth of this country from its earliest days. Thanks to NOAA and the entire Biden-Harris administration, current and future generations will experience this sanctuary and its maritime and cultural resources, forming what I think is a rich maritime cultural landscape for all of us to promote, protect, and preserve. And with that, I'm happy to turn it over to our partner at the New York State Office of Parks and Recreation and Historic Preservation, their Deputy Commissioner, Daniel McKay.
Good morning, and thank you for that warm welcome. Here at CHOW and back home in New York, today is for celebration at the announcement of Lake Ontario's designation as New York's first national marine sanctuary. This designation has been founded in collaboration and community, sparked by the ideas and energy of visionary local government leaders who crafted the Eastern Lake Ontario Sanctuary nomination nearly 7 years ago. New York State Governor Hochul commends the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for their work to create a sanctuary that will honor our rich history while we look ahead to a bright future as a world-class center of maritime history, heritage, and culture. The designation is as unique as the special place it is designed to protect, the latest in NOAA's work in building a network of sanctuaries honoring the Great Lakes' rich history. The sanctuary will cover 1,700 square miles of our beautiful north coast and protect over 43 known shipwrecks and an aircraft, representing centuries of history. NOAA took great care to listen and tailor every aspect of the sanctuary and the management plan to the people, places, and needs of Lake Ontario's communities. This sanctuary places New York's upstate communities and waters on the national stage, recognizing the region's unique and significant maritime resources, its indelible mark in American history, and that of the First Nations and its world-class recreational opportunities as well. The sanctuary will enrich and expand opportunities in research and education throughout the region, bringing scientists, scholars, archaeologists, and school children to the area to study and increase access to these submerged relics and elevate their storied past. Enhanced tourism and recreation will drive economic opportunity for surrounding communities. This new sanctuary is another indication of the ongoing transformation of our Great Lakes communities in New York State and represents a monumental step forward with NOAA to highlight all that our great state has to offer. Leaders from across local government, like Phil Church, the county administrator for Oswego, who will follow me today, the First Nations, like the Onondaga Nation, that advised NOAA throughout this designation, and numerous community organizations and businesses across the region who have been at the forefront showing us what's possible when we work together. Governor Hochul also acknowledges the impressive work of the Sanctuary Advisory Committee, Council, members who brought us so energetically to this marker. Council members worked diligently to garner support, even in the midst of the pandemic and the daunting challenges that presented. My sincere thanks to each and every member of the Advisory Council for these efforts. The palpable excitement for this designation is a testament to their shared vision. New York State joins NOAA in embarking on this next chapter. A new national marine sanctuary in Eastern Lake Ontario will develop and strengthen partnerships and collaborations. We are committed to co-managing the sanctuary with NOAA and will be taking the final steps in the coming months to formalize that relationship. New York State agencies like the Department of State, the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, and the New York State Museum are already working hard to bolster enthusiasm, interest, and resources across the region to carry this designation through implementation to success. Thank you. Let me now introduce Phil Church, Oswego County, New York, Administrator and Chair of the Nomination Committee.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning. This designation marks exactly 10 years since NOAA's Reed Boney visited myself and the mayor of Oswego to tell us about this thing called a National Marine Sanctuary Program. Intrigued, we gathered leaders from rural counties of Wayne, Cayuga, Jefferson, and Oswego, and the city of Oswego, and decided to embark together on a nomination effort. We all recognized a sanctuary based on shipwrecks and our unique maritime heritage would create beneficial economic, educational, research, and cultural opportunities. This designation is the culmination of a decade of enthusiastic work by innumerable people. These included the elected and appointed public officials across 4 counties, state officials and federal officials, and the NOAA team led by Ellen Brody, the Haudenosaunee, and many, many civic organizations, and the remarkably dedicated private citizens who volunteered countless hours to the advisory council led by Bill Christ and Katie Malinowski. And of course, to this foundation, and people like you who continue to support and value all of the sanctuaries, whether they're saltwater or fresh, or whether they're environmental or heritage-based. National marine sanctuaries are few because they are considered extraordinary special places. It's thanks to everyone that I just mentioned that the communities of southeastern Lake Ontario can now showcase our special place to the world. 5 years ago, I opened the first public hearing of the designation process by telling people about why I was involved, and I posed a few questions to them, questions that at the time didn't have answers. I told them of what I had seen and experienced as a shipwreck diver around the Great Lakes, and I asked them, why can't we have responsible and conservational access to wrecks in Lake Ontario? Why can't we bring the lake's secrets into every elementary classroom in the region? Because you can teach every classroom subject around the exciting subject of a shipwreck, and the kids love it. And I asked, why can't we provide engaging, hands-on, marine-related experiences to young people all over the lakefront region and open their minds to new possible maritime careers and leadership opportunities and roles? Those why can't we questions are finally answered. As of today, through the Sanctuary Program, the answer is we can. After 10 years, it's tempting to think of today as a climax, as a culminating reward for hard work, as an ending. But that's not how we think. Now the truly rewarding effort begins as our communities begin working in partnership with federal and state agencies to realize the sanctuary's promise. The education and understanding, the research and collaboration, the economic opportunities, and the adventures all still lie before us. It's not the end. It's just the beginning of the great Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary. Thank you all, and enjoy your conference.
Thank you. I think we would like to stand for a photo op, I believe, here. Come. Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations, sir. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. See you soon. Thank you, sir. Congratulations. Well, that was pretty exciting. I started this job as the president and CEO a year ago when my announcement was made at the Ocean Awards Gala in June in 2023. And here we are a year later, and it's pretty exciting to see the announcement of a new National Marine Sanctuary, the Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary. It is truly an honor, truly exciting moment for the sanctuary system. And I've been blessed and privileged to watch the incredible hard work of the team at the National Ocean Service and the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries carry out this incredible work in partnership with the state of New York and various counties. So, on to our opening keynote. I had a lot of fun researching our opening keynote speaker, Bailey Bass. In Avatar: The Way of Water, James Cameron's highly anticipated sequel to his critically acclaimed 2009 film Avatar, actress Bailey Bass plays Tessera, a graceful freediver from the newly introduced aquatic Metkayina clan. In preparation for her role at the age of 13, she began training in freediving, which involves swimming in deep waters without breathing equipment. In case you didn't know, much of Avatar: The Way of Water was shot underwater. She also portrayed the teenage vampire Claudia in the AMC hit series Interview with a Vampire. Bass is also a songwriter, and she recently penned the singer Madison Legare's snowy snap pop hit single, The Holidays. So at 20 years old now, Bailey has become a rising voice for her generation with a powerful call to action to listen to young people. At the 2023 Ocean Race Summit at the United Nations, Bailey said, "We only have one planet. We want it to change, and that time is now." This movement is not about one person, one voice, one movement. It is about one planet. Please welcome to the stage, Bailey Bass.
Hello. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. This is really insane. I hope everyone's doing so well. Thank you for that incredible introduction. I am so honored and grateful to be here with you all. Thank you. I'm in awe right now. So like just said, I am known for Avatar: The Way of Water and a couple other things. I played Saraya, and a lot of my acting on screen was done underwater, where I learned how to free dive and scuba dive. And Saraya, I'll show a picture of her right now. That's Mia Saraya. She is the ocean princess, and I had to spend so much time underwater, and this gave me a newfound love for the ocean because I could explore it in a new way. So I urge you, go into the ocean, learn how to free dive, go scuba diving. It is so immersive and incredible. There's something I gain underwater, and that's peace. Everything goes silent, and you become one with the ocean. As some of you may know, Pandora is based on Earth. Through Avatar, we learn from the sea to the sky, everything on our planet is connected and it works in harmony. I hope the awe people experience when they watch Avatar awakens them to the awe-inspiring nature of our planet and the importance of conserving these habitats. I say habitats, but in reality, these ecosystems are home to countless beautiful animals that deserve the right to the simple necessities that are shelter, food, and safety. Shelter, food, and safety, and that is what we as humans all around the world deserve. And as all of you know, our rising ocean temperatures are endangering these simple necessities for the animals on this planet. The climate crisis is affecting our oceans tremendously. Glaciers are melting, sea levels are rising, and another scary thing is happening. Our coral reefs are turning white and dying. Just a couple days ago, I was in French Polynesia working with coral gardeners to create a campaign for Ocean Week. Due to rising ocean temperatures, our beautiful coral reefs are bleaching. I don't know if you guys know this, but our coral reefs are one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on this planet, and they are home to over 20% of the world's ocean species, and the coral reefs are dying. Yes, there is needed urgency on this matter, and we urge people to become more involved. But with Coral Gardeners, we were doing something a little bit different. Our goal was to instill hope and remind audiences that our blue planet is so special. We want to remind people that climate-centered activism is cool, and the landscapes our planet provides are fun. Here are some photos. Oh, I use the clicky thing. Here are some photos of my time in Moorea, French Polynesia. And here's a video, if we can play it. We swam with stingrays and black-tip sharks, which was insane, but it's so amazing how connected you can become with these animals. And then if we go to the next one, that's me with some of the Coral Gardeners team. Honestly, I cannot take the smile off my face. It is urgent that we take care of our oceans, but it's also important for us to remind ourselves of how beautiful it is. Here's the Coral Gardeners team taking care of the corals, and this is a picture of the bleaching corals and watching them turn white. The coral gardeners are planting resilient corals, but as our oceans, as the temperatures are rising, they continue to bleach. And it is deeply affecting the ecosystems that these animals need. Sorry, let me find my point. And even though we are doing important work, spreading the word about the coral bleaching, we still had fun. Our planet has so much to offer, and that's what I want to remind you all today. Activism is cool. Our planet is awesome. That's why all of us are fighting so hard for it. I just want to make something clear. Supporting the climate crisis can be a daunting task. I'm very aware of that. It seems as if you don't know enough facts. As the climate destruction occurs, there is no way to reverse it, and that one person's help can't make a difference. I'm going to be real with you all. I am not the most educated on ocean conservation, but I am here with you all because every voice matters. The reality is that there is power in our voice, and no matter what our background is, together change is created with our voices. I've always wanted to use my platform for good. Even before there was a platform to be had, I wanted to spread kindness through social media. And now with a platform, I feel that it is my responsibility to use it for intentional impact and positive change. I know one of the hardest things about being so passionate and having big dreams is not letting doubt dictate our truth. I like to remind myself that if I have a gut instinct, that I need to follow it, because the reality is that is telling my truth, and our gut is an undeniable truth teller. Being a woman of color and first-generation American on my mother's side, I've learned to embrace the obstacles that come my way. My mom raised me with the ideology that life is guaranteed to be hard. Life is guaranteed to be hard, but you have to buckle up and go along for the ride that is life. What makes us different is what makes us special, just like our planet. Think about it. How we grew up, what we like and dislike, where we went to school. It all adds value to our story. And what I think is so unique about activism is that activism calls for diversity. Without diversity, there is no change, but only when we listen to different voices will we be able to make a difference. I will never forget that representation in all spaces matters, especially in environments creating change in policy, advocacy, and entertainment. It is so important. At D23, Disney's conference open to the public, where they share sneak peeks of their upcoming projects and celebrate all they've accomplished, I was present to promote Avatar: The Way of Water. There, John Landau, the producer of the Avatar franchise, introduced me to a passion-driven, intelligent woman who actually will be speaking here soon, Danny Washington, who is a marine biologist and founder of the ocean conservation nonprofit Big Blue and You. I was so excited. This science-loving, women empowerment-inspired girly was thrilled to meet another Black woman making waves in the ocean conservation movement. The pun was intended. I felt seen. Seeing someone that looked like me felt so inspiring. This excitement fostered a friendship between me and Danny, which resulted in my first UN speaking engagement. This led to this morning where I am speaking to you all. That's the power of diversity. When people feel seen, they feel included. And the more included we feel, the more comfortable we are to work together. So be unapologetic. State the facts, speak the truth, because the reality is that the more of us walk hand in hand to support our oceans, the more we will get done. Before I go, I just want everyone to trust me for a moment and close your eyes. Trust me, just close your eyes. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Picture waves crashing forward and back. Breathe in, breathe out. Open your eyes. I hope today reminds you all the power of our oceans. I hope today you are inspired to take steps forward in ocean conservation, so one day you too can be one with our oceans. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey Bass, for launching our discussions today and sharing your passions and motivations with us. I would love to just take that breath. That is a powerful, powerful tool. Okay, earlier I mentioned that we had a photo of our youth delegations that are here in DC, storming the Capitol Hill, and we want to put it up there. There are just dozens and dozens of youth from all over the country here in town during Capitol Hill Ocean Week, sharing their leadership and their inspirational voice. So we just want to thank you all. Thank you all for coming to Capitol Hill Ocean Week. We really appreciate all that you're doing. Yesterday, we called this work Heart Work at the Upwell Summit at the Center for American Progress, and that is absolutely what our young people are doing. So our first panel today is the ConSERVE Leadership Roundtable. Service is such an important part of leadership, but it is often overlooked as one of those key traits. It felt important to bring this issue to the forefront at the top of our discussions at this conference today. I look forward to this conversation, particularly to home in on the acknowledgement that people in our communities are at the heart of the solutions we need for the great challenges we face. Please welcome to the stage Jennifer Littlejohn, Acting Assistant Secretary, Bureau of Oceans and International and Environmental Scientific Affairs, Julian Cyr, Massachusetts State Senator, Danny Washington, artist and activist, co-founder of Big Blue and You, Brian Davis, President and CEO of the Georgia Aquarium, Joel Moffitt, Director of Environmental and Special Events at Native Americans and Philanthropy, and Dr. Richard Pyle, Center for Exploration of Coral Reef Systems at the Bishop Museum. Please join us. So thank you again to our distinguished panelists this morning at the ConSERVE Leadership Roundtable. We're going to jump right in. And I have a question. This is a roundtable, so we want to make it a little more informal and have folks answer questions as they come, but we'll have a few questions for some of our specific guests as well. For all of our panelists, and we'll just kick this off, and we can maybe go from left to right, I guess, here. What do you believe is the most pressing issue facing our ocean today? And how can leadership from diverse sectors effectively address this challenge?
All right.
Start with that. Big
it
one.
Is on. Well, thank you so much for that question. It's, I think, one of the most important ones we can ask ourselves at this time. From my perspective, the most important challenge facing the ocean is time. We all know that every day the ocean is getting warmer and more acidic and less productive. And so the actions that we take now will have a tremendous impact. And, you know, I like to say that we should be harnessing what Dr. King called at the time when we were focusing on the civil rights movement, the fierce urgency of now, and a call to action to preserve our planet. Now, that's not to say that we haven't made a number of great strides. A couple of things that we have done over just the most recent period. We have all agreed on a global goal to preserve 30% of our land waters, but specifically our ocean, by 2030. We've achieved historic agreements, both in biodiversity as well as reducing harmful fishery subsidies. And of course, I would say negotiations are underway to address the sort of scourge of plastic pollution in our environment. So while there is a challenge there is a moment of opportunity for us to lead in this space. And I would say, I must say, on many and all of these issues, my team is working tirelessly, partnering with many of you in this audience and perhaps on this stage as well, to try to figure out the best solutions and to take in your ideas and partner where we can. On your second question regarding leadership, I think I would just piggyback on that again and saying a lot of that has to do with our work with a variety of different partners. So we're trying very hard to engage in multiple spaces, whether it's partnering with philanthropies and conservation organizations in the Pacific to address some of the sustainable planning there, or focusing with new global partners, again, as I mentioned on some of these agreements. We are trying to operate across the board in all of these spaces, and that's what the kind of leadership on behalf of this government, and in particular, I would say I'm proud of this administration and their focus from day one on making these challenges and addressing climate as well as ocean diplomacy and what I like to call blue diplomacy as a priority, not only in word, but in deed.
Thank you. Dr. Pyle?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, one of the greatest challenges we face in the oceans is loss of biodiversity. We all understand climate change now. It took several decades to get the rest of the world to comprehend the importance and reality of climate change. And I guess what the next chapter of that story is understanding that the existential risk to humanity from climate change is not necessarily sea level rise or rising temperatures, it's loss of biodiversity. We depend on biodiversity for all the oxygen we breathe, all the food we eat. Basically, we cannot survive without biodiversity. And it's starting to become lost right now. We're at the brink of the sixth great extinction of this planet. And we're beginning to feel that pain, but future generations are going to feel that pain much more acutely than we have been. And so my particular role is trying to discover and document that biodiversity before it's gone. You know, we're lucky in the early 21st century to have a pretty good sense of what biodiversity is or has been up till now. In other words, most of the biodiversity that we've shared this planet with is still among us. By the end of the 21st century, that will no longer be true. And I guess my sense of urgency and my message to leadership is, you know, learn to appreciate that we really need to understand and protect biodiversity. That should be our primary mission going forward if our concern is the perpetuation of humanity for more than the next few decades or centuries.
Thank you. Joel?
Thanks, Joel. I think I'm having a conversation with myself. I would say the most pressing challenge, you know, from an indigenous perspective, is climate change, and I think it encompasses what was already been spoken of before about ocean acidification, sea level rise, loss of biodiversity. So we've been living in these spaces, in these marine spaces, coastal spaces for thousands of years, and our ways of life are changing. They're impacted right now, disproportionately. So when we talk about the challenges facing, it's a challenge to our people, our way of life, our communities. It's all of the foods that we depended on and that we still depend on. And when we look at these species either going away entirely, becoming extinct potentially, or because of climate change, they're moving to other areas. And we're a place-based people, so we know these waters. We've stewarded them. We've lived in balance with them. But if the salmon are not in our fishing area, and because of climate change, they're traveling 1,000 miles away, well then that's a cultural loss, that's a loss of our ways of life. And so that's the most pressing challenge to tribes and indigenous communities, is a loss of way of life because of the climate change impacts.
Thank you very much. Danny.
Yes, really honored to be here today. Again, thank you for this panel and kicking off CHOW in such a bright way. From my own perspective, I would say that it's really about lack of connection. I know that most of us in this room probably already have a connection with the ocean, hence why we're here. But when you step out of these doors, most people within the global population don't have a chance to interact with the ocean in a physical way or even on digital media. So I think that lack of connection is what we really need to focus on, and that comes with leadership, right? And being able to represent different groups, especially historically excluded groups who were physically prevented from interacting with the ocean for various reasons. But thankfully, we have groups like Black and Marine Science and Minorities in Shark Science, MISS. I know the founder, Jasmine, is here in the room today. And because of their leadership, we're able to see more groups who have been excluded in the past included now. And the last thing I'd say would be swimming skills. One of the after effects of being excluded from spaces in the ocean is that there's fear there because of the lack of skill to be able to get in and immerse yourself. So I think really pushing for more young people especially, but adults as well. My stepfather, who's 65, just learned how to swim, and he did it proudly. So, it's never too late. That's what I'd say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Davis. I happen to be a kelp hugger and a CEO. I think one of the biggest issues that we are dealing with in relation to the oceans, it's a very complex ecosystem that is truly undervalued. We can add garbage to it and it'll disappear for a little while. We don't realize how it controls weather patterns. I've been educated in the ocean for years, and I'm still fascinated by how much the ocean shapes this planet. Just think about what the layperson lacks. So if there's no education about what's really happening in the ocean and what its power is, then how does somebody truly value it? And that becomes a tremendous barrier for us. When you talk about things like climate change and how long it took for people to come around to educate some of the impacts of what the ocean's experiencing as a result of our changing climate, we can't do that with all the complexity of what's happening in the ocean about every issue. It can't take 2 and 3 decades to bring someone around to understand the impacts. So I think it is that level of lack of education and knowledge and appreciation for the power of the ocean that really is at the basis of what's going on. And if we don't get people to fully understand that power and what we need to do to preserve it, we're going to continue on an uphill battle that we will never be able to change the course of.
Profound. Thank you. Julian.
Good morning. My name is Julian Sear. I'm a state senator in Massachusetts, and I represent Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket, right? So that arm that sticks off of New England. I represent the most coastline of any state legislator in Massachusetts. And I come from, and I grew up in these communities, right, that we are inextricably linked to the ocean in our blue economy, in our fisheries, even in how we sustain ourselves in these busy summer months, right? People are coming to visit Cape Cod for the ocean, right? And allegedly for this pristine marine environment. And the truth of the matter is, we've had some real success, but the environment actually isn't terribly pristine as well. And so, from the challenges, the immediate challenges that we're facing in the Gulf of Maine, certainly ocean acidification, particularly in the Gulf of Maine, where you have this rapidly warming water body. Also eutrophication inshore. We've had all this development, and how we handle our waste, especially our wastewater, has really had an adverse effect on our marine environment. We're also grappling with, we're really looking towards the ocean to be a big part of our solution around climate change, right? We're leading the nation with the first, utility-scale offshore wind project in waters just south of my district, right? But that challenge of how do you go about implementing that and harnessing the ocean in a way that also protects and stewards it, and then certainly marine conservation, some real successes we can talk about, and also some real challenges, but very much a place that's interwoven into the lifeblood of where we live and where we make our lives. An honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Assistant Secretary Littlejohn, the Bureau of Oceans and International Environmental Scientific Affairs is celebrating its 50th year anniversary. As our nation's top ocean diplomat, and as you look back, I guess, and looking forward, how has U.S. diplomacy made a difference?
Well, thank you so much for the question and for recognizing our 50th anniversary. Can we get a round of applause for 50 years of ocean diplomacy? Thank you. So just looking back, when Congress created our Bureau 50 years ago, it was part of a larger environmental movement, right, that created Earth Day, established EPA and NOAA, that launched the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, and the Environmental Policy Act, and much, much more. So this was part of a time when really folks were active and engaged, and I'm hoping to see more of that now. Maybe this will be sort of a moment. But our Bureau was created specifically to focus on ocean, environment, and scientific affairs. And the Congress, I think, at that time understood the importance of protecting our planet as a national imperative, a national security challenge. And so more specifically regarding the ocean and a few of the, I think, areas where we're particularly proud of how our blue diplomacy, as I like to say, has made a difference. I'll start with something called the Our Ocean Conference, which many of you are familiar with. It was founded by the United States, led by our then Secretary of State in 2014, Secretary John Kerry. And since that time, we have had roughly 2,500 commitments for approximately $130 billion. That's a big number. And all of that was to tackle things like the climate crisis, yes, advance sustainable fisheries, foster sustainable blue economies, address plastic pollution, support maritime security, and build out marine protected areas. So these dollars, these commitments, these initiatives, your work, our collective action is having a global impact. So look all the little bureau that could. OES also led the negotiations to bring into force the Port State Measures Agreement, the first legally binding international agreement targeting IUU fishing. Now, OES was also, if I might say, a leader in international efforts to finalize the High Seas Treaty, which we all know is a landmark international achievement that will allow for us to conserve and sustainably use the high seas biodiversity, including through marine protected areas. So this is all, I think, exciting things that we're a part of. And I have to say, for all these high-profile initiatives and efforts that I've just mentioned, there are countless numbers of others that small incremental efforts and achievements and hard work by the people who work in my bureau every single day to advance this important work to protect and preserve our ocean. So that's where I'd say I'd stop.
I mean, that's quite a lot. But you know, it's fascinating, of course, to hear of the long tradition of these impactful policies and decisions that have global ramifications. Maybe we just bring it home to a local area, Julian, in the Nantucket area and so forth, and that you represent. Give us a sense of, as a state senator, how you see the role of policy in driving ocean conservation efforts. Is there a recent legislative initiative in Massachusetts you think that could be a model here that others should know about?
So there's a long history of this work in Massachusetts. You know, we passed the Mass Oceans Act in 2008. We have an ocean management plan that's updated, actually was just updated last year. But we've been more focusing on a few areas. Ocean acidification is a huge challenge for us. So we work to convene a task force, getting to rely on a whole host of international leading organizations that we have, right, literally in our backyard, in our waters, and then crafted legislation around ocean acidification that we're working to advance and we're hoping to move next year. And really, there's no sort of one silver bullet for this, right? This is looking at How do you move forward on a whole host of pieces related to wastewater, related to nitrogen in the environment, relating to stormwater runoff? How do you do shell recycling? A whole sort of pieces that we're trying to sort of cobble together. Also a lot of leadership in Massachusetts around putting speed restrictions in place and reducing vertical lines as it relates to right whales, and which is this, the North Atlantic right whale is very endangered, working with Center for Coastal Studies, New England Aquarium, and others. The challenge, right, though, is that we can only control what we control, like in our waters, right? And when you look at the right whale, when you look at ocean acidification, hopefully move forward in this legislation, when you look at lots of investments we've made in wastewater infrastructure, which is very much tied to and key to ocean work. We've made some progress, but there's a lot more that we need to do. And although we are a peninsula and an island, we're not living in an island as it relates to policy. So you need that coordination among other New England states.
I appreciate that point that you made, that certain species, like the North Atlantic right whale, are not just in your waters. They're a species that go up and down the Atlantic coast. And in fact, thinking, Brian, about that species along the coast of Georgia there, the Georgia Aquarium plays a significant role in marine education and conservation, serving both the local and a national community. So how would you sort of say that you balance the goals of public engagement that need to take place, but also the scientific research to foster that deeper understanding?
Listen, that is the reason we exist, and I have to give a little context. I'm an educator by training. I happen to be a CEO, but my career started educating people about animals from all over the world, and I went and did one of the most exciting jobs and dangerous jobs too. I taught middle schoolers. I taught them science, and I got them engaged, and I figured once I could accomplish that, I can run an aquarium and navigate my way through the board. The reason I say that is we have 3 million individuals approximately that we see any given year that comes to the aquarium. And our sole job there, aside from making sure that our animals are well cared for and have incredible lives, is to make sure people are connecting and have an opportunity to understand the complexities of the ecosystems that these animals are a part of. So it is our job to make sure that each one of those 3 million guests walk away educated about these systems and what they can do to protect these species. It is that level of connection that we really look to as the mechanism for driving change, driving decision-making, making a connection. These animals, these individuals don't have an opportunity to, Bailey mentioned before, get out there and connect, immerse yourself in this world. And having been a part of the zoo and aquarium community for literally decades, I can tell you when I take a dive and I see what's happening at the Coral Reef Track in Florida and how it's struggling. It is that opportunity for connection that makes all the difference in the world, that I have to do something. And that drives me to come back and say, what does the story, what does the communication need to be with 3 million guests to ensure they are activated to do something about coral ecosystems? And that is the role of aquariums. That's our job, to ensure those mechanisms happen. But there are a lot of things that people don't know about aquariums. I'm in Atlanta. It's one of the biggest hubs, and confiscations of animals are tremendous. We get phone calls literally once, twice a month about, I have, 100 or 200 of the most endangered fish on the planet. Will you guys take them on to care for them so they don't have to be destroyed? We raise our hand every time and say we're gonna do it. That's part of our job. And we care for those animals, get them a better home, in some cases work to fly them back from their country of origin on our dime. Because that is the role of aquariums. It's much bigger than what people recognize and realize. Right now we are housing some manatees, and that's working with state and federal agencies, because seagrasses are obviously under a tremendous amount of stress off the coast of Florida. So we're housing those animals. We get a lot of lettuce to get a 250-pound animal up to 450 pounds. A lot of lettuce so that that animal can then be released. Our jobs are not confined to just ensuring people see animals. I have a role and responsibility. I mentioned to you all I'm a kelp hugger, and I take my job very seriously, but I think all zoos and aquariums have that role to contribute back.
Appreciate that, and I think that the point is really well taken about the power of zoos and aquariums, which are across the United States, these centers for connecting and helping people to understand that dual mission feels like incredible work that we need to continue to bolster. Something you said also about education sparked a thought, which is to say that, Danny, you're also an artist, and you use art to engage people in this mission. Could you maybe share a little bit about how that happened, what the inspiration was, where did that seed get planted, and what do you think is effective about using art in that way?
Absolutely. Thank you, Joel. So, yes, I mean, since a young age, I've always been attracted to creative forms of expression, all mediums. And today, I work as a television host with different science programming across different networks, and I just enjoy the idea of being able to collaborate with scientists and to help spread and amplify their stories on different forms of media. But the real heart work that I do is working directly with young people who are emerging leaders in ocean conservation who want to have their voices heard. And I just want to be clear, I'm 37 years old. I'm not technically a youth. Just want to put that out there. But I'm so honored and just really just excited to be up here to help amplify the young voices that are here with us today. 16 years ago, I started Big Blue and You, co-founded with my mom as a 21-year-old to help provide a platform for young people in the ocean space. And since then, I've had a chance to meet hundreds, if not thousands, of people here in our country and beyond who are doing so much work for our ocean in their own communities. And as of today, I mean, the UNFCCC says that 89% of global youth around the world believe that their generation can make a difference on climate issues. And so using art as that medium to help talk about how they want to make that change, what they see for their own future, is really, really powerful. And why? It's because art is what helps cultivate empathy. And empathy is what will then bridge the gap to that connection with the ocean and the connection to each other. And so the more that we can bring that to light, bring that forward in our work collectively, I think we're going to see a lot of positive change there.
Thank you. Joel, indigenous communities have a profound connection to the ocean. Contemporary conservation, of course, is very eager, right, to tap into Native American knowledge and practices, and that can often be very extractive. So, what role can philanthropy play in shifting from an extractive model here to a more equitable partnership?
Thanks, Joel. I appreciate you shining a light on that practice. It's not uncommon. Tribal nations and indigenous communities have a long history of dominant society coming in and extracting knowledge or resources. And so we're trying to, at Native Americans in Philanthropy, we're trying to indigenize the sector, indigenize philanthropy. And part of that is looking at what are our values and how has philanthropy, and so we're talking about governments coming in, and I really appreciate this administration building on the Obama administration and really focusing on tribal knowledge and incorporating that into regulations and laws and management practices. And I think that President Biden and Vice President Harris have codified some of that, so I appreciate that. That's a big step in moving in the right direction. But it has to be done in the right way. And so when we're talking about how to build meaningful relationships with tribal nations, it starts with the respect for our tribal sovereignty. And it takes time. Because we've been burned in the past, as I mentioned. And so to build those meaningful relationships, you have to understand the history, the culture, the unique political and legal relationship we have with the federal government, our place, our environments, and how we interact with them. And to truly incorporate that knowledge in a more equitable way, really you should have those tribal nations and those indigenous communities lead the effort. So this administration has been tremendous in turning those principles into action through co-management agreements with tribal nations. We've had a lot of success on Forest Service lands, Park Service lands, BLM lands, not so much in the ocean. And so I think that's a space where we really need to focus on NOAA and other agencies that have authority over ocean and marine spaces and coastal spaces to encourage them to walk the walk and to work with tribal nations and take the lead from tribal nations in co-managing those lands and waters.
Thank you for that. You know, part of the mission of a lot of these agencies, and of course scientists and so forth, is to continue the exploration and the discovery of new life in our oceans, which is certainly driving the story around biodiversity and helping our nation and to understand its implications for loss. I think that power of discovery is something that maybe we can talk a little bit further about here. Dr. Pyle, your work at the Center for Exploration of Coral Reef Ecosystems involves cutting-edge research on biodiversity. And as a ichthyologist, if I'm saying that correctly, you've discovered quite a number of species. So maybe as we pivot a little bit here, could you give us a sense of maybe what are some of the most exciting things that you've discovered that can inspire this audience to be thinking about the ocean differently?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, ichthyologist is also pronounced fish nerd. That's how we like to think of ourselves. So yeah, just to give a little bit of context, coral reefs are the canaries in the coal mine for climate change. I mean, they're probably where we're going to be seeing, we're already seeing it in Florida and the Great Barrier Reef and many other places. What a lot of people don't understand is that almost everything we understand about coral reefs is limited to the top 100 feet or so close to the surface. What we didn't know 20 or 30 years ago when my colleague Brian Green and I started sort of exploring deeper depths is that coral reefs actually extend much deeper, down to about 500 or 600 feet. And the reason we didn't know that before is because it's really hard for us as terrestrial mammals to go explore those habitats. Scuba only lets you go to about 100 feet if you're a scientist to spend a lot of time. You can go deeper, but it starts to get awfully dangerous. So what our focus has been is leveraging new technologies, advanced diving technologies, robot technologies, image technologies, to try to fill in our understanding of what lives on coral reefs down deeper than where most scientists and researchers understand. And as Joel, you alluded to, we're finding all kinds of species we didn't know exist. Now, in the broader context of biodiversity, we spent the last 250 years or so trying to catalog how many species we share this planet with. And so far, after 250 years, we've managed to document somewhere between 10 and 20% of the species on this Earth. The other 80 to 90% are still unknown to us. That gives you a sense of the magnitude of the problem that we don't understand biodiversity. And you know the expression, you can't protect what you don't understand. I'm not sure that's quite right. You can protect what you don't understand, but you can be way more effective and efficient at protecting what you do understand. And so what our role is trying to do is discover new things. Now, you had asked about exciting discoveries. Every discovery we make is exciting, I promise you. There is nothing more thrilling than being the first person to see some fish or a marine invertebrate or something that you know no human's ever seen before. I mean, I cannot describe how exciting that feeling is. But it's also an ominous feeling because you wonder how much longer that species is going to survive. We used to think that our impacts as humans were primarily on the shallow coral reefs, but one of the more sobering things we've discovered or beginning to realize is that no, actually these deep coral reefs may even be less resilient than the shallow coral reefs. We may be extinguishing them before we even know they exist, really. And so I guess guess that's where our urgency, our sense of urgency comes from in exploring and documenting biodiversity, because once it's gone forever. It's really tragic when a species we know about goes extinct, but when a species we never even knew existed goes extinct, it's lost not just to us, but all of future humanity and the rest of the history of Earth, really.
And thank you for that. That's brilliant. And I feel like we would be remiss in saying that probably a lot of that undiscovered life on our planet is in the high seas, right? Potentially in areas that are outside the jurisdictions of any one government, but belong essentially to all of us as a human biological heritage on this planet. So I guess I'm going to follow up with a question from our audience, and this comes from Scott. What are the prospects for rapid U.S. ratification of the UN High Seas? So this is for you, Secretary Littlejohn. What are the prospects for rapid U.S. ratification of the UN High Seas Treaty? How soon will the President transmit this treaty to the Senate for advice and consent for ratification? Any thoughts there?
So I don't want to get ahead of any decisions or processes, but what I can say is there is a tremendous amount of work that's taking place right now to ensure that we are positioned well to move forward. At this time, we are taking a close look at all of the authorities that we have and what we can do to make sure that we can move forward. So at the same time, we are not trying to lose steam on other areas and lines of effort. So we are trying to make sure that we are looking at all the work that would take place to implement such an agreement moving forward. And it would be something that I think that we're very focused on every single day, as I'd mentioned previously. And so to Scott, was it? If you want to talk more afterwards, I'll be sitting right over there, and I'd be happy to talk with you more about it.
Thank you. Thank you. So, one of the things that seems obvious about this work that all of you are participating in, and you've mentioned that the leadership seems to be tied in how you build your coalitions, your local communities, those folks who are going to weigh in and provide perspectives on all of your work. Collaboration is key in the movement to protect our ocean and seas and Great Lakes. So can you potentially share some examples of successful collaborations that you might be involved in that can also serve as a lesson? And maybe we can do this with the remaining time we've got. We can do rapid fire kind of, what are your couple of quick good hits, things you feel proud of that you think that others should know about. So successful collaborations. And why don't we start with you, Secretary Littlejohn, and we'll just kind of come this way.
I mentioned earlier the Our Ocean Conference. I think it's one of the sort of beacons of hope that are out there because it's going to have life beyond the Secretary's tenure who launched it. Oftentimes people launch something and then it lives and dies on their work, but he has created something that is going to continue across the world. We have the next one coming up. And so that's one thing. And as a result of it and why it's so successful is because we're now able to track countries' commitments. So it's not just people say we're going to do things, but now we're able to see what and how and when. It also launched a number of successful other initiatives, whether it's Global Fishing Launch, the Ocean Conservation Pledge, which has nearly two dozen countries that are participating now, and several other initiatives that came out of that. I think that, to me, is the measure of success, as well as the fact that every time that I've gone, there's been a tremendous amount of engagement and support from the next generation. We haven't really dug into that, but I think it's very important that if these types of initiatives that we're proud of are going to have life beyond our tenure, they have to have a next generation that is vested and excited and engaged in them. So that's what I would say is what we're seeing as the runway for one of our successes.
Great, thank you.
For me, I would say the most exciting and productive collaboration I've been involved with was the group that essentially built the foundation for establishing the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Sanctuary as at the time the largest marine protected area on Earth under President Obama. What's really exciting is it's no longer the world's largest marine protected area, which means that it helped spark a movement towards that direction. It brought a lot lot of scientists and indigenous cultural people and policymakers and a whole swath of people together all singing the same tune in harmony to make that happen. And I think that's how you get things done.
Yeah, I guess we can build on that to say that the National Marine Monument has been proposed to become a National Marine Sanctuary now. So that's exciting as well.
Yeah, I misspoke. I called it a sanctuary. I was getting ahead of myself. It is a monument on its way to becoming a sanctuary, yes.
Well, thanks, Joel. In the realm of collaboration, I mean, to get anything done, we need to work with partners. And I would say that from Native Americans and philanthropy, one of the most successful collaborations we've had has been our Tribal Nations Climate and Conservation Funding Collaborative. It's a mouthful. Just call it the collaborative. That's what we call it. We just call it the collaborative. And in the prior question, we talked about, well, how can philanthropy play a role in really focusing this conservation effort on tribal knowledge and tribal expertise and incorporating that in the right way. And I think this collaborative is a demonstration of that. It can be an example to not only philanthropy, but our NGO friends and our federal, state, and local government friends. This is a collaborative that raised more than $100 million to invest in tribally led conservation work.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. 15 funding partners, a lot of them in this room today, really stepped up and are changing their way of thinking and incorporating our Native values. When we're talking about why we're doing this work, and I talked about our way of life and preserving our culture and our history and our people, it really goes to the fundamental principle of treating our fisheries, our terrestrial animals, the water and land as relatives. They are our relatives, and we're taking care of them as such. And so I'm really proud of these funding partners who stepped up and they gave the trust to the tribal nations to lead this work. And a big piece of that, $100 million, has been focused on, because that seems like a lot of money, it's great, but this challenge is going to be a multi-generational effort, right? So it's going to take much more than that. So we're leveraging those funds. And one really great example is the America the Beautiful Challenge that this administration placed before the public and philanthropy to put $500 million of federal dollars towards conservation, challenge philanthropy to match that. They created the America the Beautiful Challenge, which was incredible. And we noticed that tribes weren't participating in that challenge. They weren't applying for the grants because there was a big burden of a non-federal cash match on them. And so we utilized the funds we created from this collaborative to just pay for the match for all the tribes, take that burden off of them. And we have so many more tribes applying and so many more tribes awarded. We actually use only $2.5 million of that collaborative funds to leverage $75 million in funding under the America the Beautiful Challenge for tribes. So that's a super success.
Well, in terms of collaboration, I believe to my core that we are a part of one ocean and we are one people. And so taking that mantra with me wherever I go, opportunities to collaborate happen all the time. And I want to tell you a quick story of my favorite collaboration. So back in 2016, my collaborators, Bill Mott and Sean Russell, we came together to talk about how we could bring more young voices to CHOW specifically and make sure that we could invigorate and energize the space and make sure that they have a seat at the table. Fast forward to today, this week, we hosted an advocacy training thanks to Earth Echo International, who put it together, and we had over 60 youth in the room learning how to go to Capitol Hill. Yes. Learning different skills on how to, function throughout the week of CHOW, but also to go to the Hill, speak to their policymakers, and to be able to just build on their voices. And we're so grateful to all the organizations that came together to make that happen. including the Ocean Project, Earth Echo, Big Blue and You, Sustainable Ocean Alliance, and From the Bow Seat. And collectively, we're working together as a coalition, which we like to call Sea Youth Rise Up. And we're so grateful for how the National Marine Sanctuaries Foundation has embraced us since the very beginning when we began in 2016. And as we see this energizing presence continue to grow in spaces like this, I encourage you, if you are a professional in this space, if you're a funder, please point your resources toward our young people. We need funding for travel to get to places like this. We need micro grants to support these young people and their work in their own local community. And we also need more mentors. So if you meet somebody today, if you were at the advocacy training, if you're a part of Sea Youth Rise Up, can you make some noise? Are you in the room? Yes, so they need mentors and mentorship. So I definitely encourage everyone, please connect and find a mentee. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian.
This energy over here is contagious. This is awesome. Thank you, Dan. We're collaborators. We do that all the time. So I can't just give you one, but I will give you a couple very quickly. From the beginning, one of the first things I did when I became part of the organization is I wanted to do a lot of teacher training in a very non-traditional way. Oftentimes as teachers, we're told, do not put your students in rows and lecture in front of them. But teacher training, we put teachers in rows and we lecture in front of them. So one of the things I wanted to do was immerse teachers in the actual environment. So we developed a program where teachers were taken from the headwaters of a river system and traversed it all the way through Georgia to Grays Reef National Marine Sanctuary. And that collaborative was awesome. To be able to have teachers actually immersed in the environment and see what water actually experiences before it gets to that coastal region, particularly understanding that Georgia actually had a coastal reef ecosystem, blew their minds. And that collaborative that we had with Grays Reef was outstanding. And we've been doing that for nearly 20 years, getting teachers connected in that fashion. Another thing is working as a collaborative with other zoos and aquariums. We actually have success with breeding of some species. And one of the species we've had a tremendous amount of success with were zebra sharks. And what we've done is we've established an area in off the coast in Indonesia. We protected the area first, and then we started taking the eggs and pups and releasing them to that area to be able to bring this species that was decimated in that area back to be a part of the ecosystem. Those collaboratives are extremely powerful for us to be able to do. And then I mentioned before the federal agencies that we work with, being able to be actively engaged with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the local departments of natural resources, to be able to help species when they're struggling in the natural environment, get them back to a better position, to be able to get them back into the natural environment and help them to thrive. Those collaboratives are just a few that wind up being extremely powerful for us and helps to move our mission forward as an organization.
Thank you.
Three quick examples of some collaboration in my neck of the woods. One has been around monitoring and data and water quality monitoring. We actually embedded into our basically funding scheme for wastewater, having routine water quality monitoring and having a reliable revenue stream and funding stream for that. Really essential, right, to providing data to scientists to further inform our work. The second has been in offshore wind, and as we're working and looking at subsequent projects, and when we're expecting to have a number of them, really mandating collaboration in the law around how these procurements go forward, right? That fishers have to have a seat at the table, that tribes have to have a seat at the table. We actually have our first tribal benefit agreement, I think, in the country related to a project off the shores of Massachusetts. So that's been a big piece. And then the third has been collaboration on what has been an environmental and ecological success story, but a bit of a public relations challenge, and that's around Atlantic white sharks, or great white sharks. So when I was growing up on Cape Cod, we did not have many or see many great white sharks. It was not something you were concerned about. Maybe about 8 to 10 years ago, we actually had several encounters. We actually had a fatality related to great white sharks. And really the great white shark population really has had this remarkable restoration, largely in part thanks to the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which has brought back a seal population. and now the sharks are back. And now actually today, the place, in my understanding, is the place really in the world of the North Atlantic where you can see great white sharks most closely to the shore, doing predation, feeding, just chilling out, hanging around, is off the shores of Cape Cod. And in a place where people are coming to, go to the beach, right? That can be a bit of a challenge. But really having a collaborative approach with scientists, with the state, with our Chamber of Commerce, with our business community, making sure that we're educating the public about how to recreate safely in the ocean. And there's lots of safety challenges, in the ocean, as Danny was talking about. And that's actually been successful for us, right? And so while we did have several incidents and unfortunately a fatality in 2018, we haven't actually had anything since, and I think that's really been thanks to really good collaboration around educating the public to really, look at this incredible, remarkable apex predator that we've had return to our waters thanks to our environmental policy.
Great, thank you. Well, I would love to say thank you to all of our distinguished panelists for this incredible conversation. Thank you also to our audience for your questions. We really appreciate each and every one of you and your exciting stories and the developments going on in all of your corners of the world. Once again, thank you all. Can we get a round of applause for our panelists? Okay, don't head out just yet, folks. Sorry. Hold on, that was not a break. That was not a break. Everyone, please, if you could quiet down, take your seats as quickly as possible. We'd like to provide some closing remarks on this incredible conversation. So before you step away, it is my pleasure to introduce, for closing remarks, Brenda Mallory. Brenda Mallory is the 12th chair on the Council of Environmental Quality, confirmed by the Senate in April 14th, 2021. Brenda is the first African American to hold this position, and as chair, she advises the president on environmental and national resource policies, focusing on environmental justice, climate change, job growth, and economic development. Chair Mallory grew up in Waterbury, Connecticut. She witnessed the impact of industrial decline on her community, and this experience fueled her commitment to ensuring the environmental laws benefit all people, especially as we transition to a clean energy future. Chair Mallory is a Yale and Columbia Law School graduate. She spent 20 years at the EPA tackling the Clean Water Act, as well as many other significant issues, including working on environmental justice and diversity initiatives. At CEQ, Chair Mallory played a key role in shaping major environmental policies during the Obama administration, including the 2016 NEPA GHG guidance, as well as the Lautenberg TSC reform bill, which enhanced chemical safety and health protections. She also contributed to the Clean Water Rule, protecting streams and wetlands, and the designation of national monuments. Please welcome Chair Brenda Mallory.
Good morning, everyone. It's such an honor to be here and to see a room full of people who I know include many friends that we've made over the years. And what a great panel we just heard. I know all of you are as inspired as I was sitting there listening to them talk about collaborations in particular, since we know how important that is for all of the work that we do. And we also know that without that, we're not going to be successful at the things that we're doing. So I'm thrilled to be here this morning to just put a exclamation point on the points that you already heard from them. Thank you to Joel, of course, for his introduction and for all of the work that he is doing at the foundation. We had a great celebration last night, and it was wonderful to see his leadership at work. And I just want to thank you to all of you who are participating in Capitol Hill Ocean Week, the organizers and supporters, the presenters, the participants. It really does inspire me and always give me hope to see the way in which folks are working all across the country, all across the world, around the issues that are so important to us all. It's going to take that sort of dedication and focus in multiple areas in order for us to kind of move forward. So I'm grateful for that. The ocean is a life source for us all. It's a phrase I'm sure that this room is hearing a lot this week. I think underscoring the importance of that is so vital at this moment. And we know that the ocean and the communities that it supports face unprecedented threats due to climate change, among other things. To meet the moment, President Biden and Vice President Harris are delivering the most ambitious climate change and conservation agenda in history. And this is an agenda that includes actions to protect the livelihoods and lifeways that depend on a healthy ocean. Building upon the work that many of you have been leading for decades, we have made great progress, but there's so much more to do. So much that I think that at this point that we are even innovating as we move forward to identify what the next new thing needs to be in order for us to be successful. But let me tell you a few of the things that we've been doing and identify just some of the work that's underway. Just this week, we released the National Strategy for a Sustainable Ocean Economy. The strategy will guide policies to build a sustainable ocean economy that protects ecosystems while creating good-paying jobs that will sustain communities for generations to come. This morning, I understand Deputy Secretary Graves was here and announced the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's finalizing the Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary, which is a wonderful addition to the system. In addition, there are processes underway considering the proposed Chumash Heritage Marine Sanctuary and Pacific Remote Islands Sanctuary, among others that are actually in process. And in that very change, the number of sanctuaries that are even being considered is an important moment and development in and of itself. NOAA is also hard at work considering a proposed sanctuary for Papahana Munu I messed up that. Papahana Naumuku Keakea, and planning for restoration of the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. Last December, we unveiled the first Ocean Justice Strategy, a roadmap to help coastal communities prepare for climate impacts, including rising sea levels and intensifying storms. The strategy is driven by this administration's belief that all people, regardless of background and income and zip code and race and ability and any type of affiliation, should have equitable access to the benefits provided by the ocean. It also acknowledges the impacts of climate change and how they continue to overburden communities that are already overburdened, and to focus on how we actually think about addressing these historic injustices and underinvestment as we move forward with solutions. Last March, the administration released the first ever Ocean Climate Action Plan to harness the capacity of the ocean as a source of solutions to the climate crisis. And we've already taken action towards our goal. This administration has already permitted 8 new offshore wind projects, more than any previous administration. I believe when we came into office, there were none, and now there are 8. We have made great progress over the past 3.5 years on these types of activities and a number of others. But importantly, it's all happening with your partnership and in community with many of you today. And so just grateful that we have such partners to work with. And our success really depends on the ability of not only the the partnerships that already exist, but actually bringing in new people and new partners into the movement. You know, from public servants and scientists, from conservationists, educators, activists, students, community leaders, and beyond. A new core of folks in all of those categories is developing and is going to be important as we move forward. So thinking about how we make strides in bringing on new leaders and diverse leaders into these existing conservation spaces needs to be a priority, I think, among all in this group. We're actively looking at how we incorporate these new and different perspectives into the work that we're doing, and making sure that, again, we overcome some of the burdens, some of the ways of thinking, who you talk to and when you talk to them as we move forward in our new approaches. So. To the leaders who have been driving this work for decades, I say thank you. I say thank you on behalf of so many people who are grateful for your existence. To our newer partners, I say welcome. We are delighted to have you. Your work is essential for ensuring that we are able to protect our ocean and coastal communities for generations to come. Thank you all for being here, and I'm grateful for all the work that's underway.
Thank you, Chair Mallory. Okay, everyone, we are going to take a quick break and let you get up, do your bio break, and get some coffee and refresh. We will be right back here at 11 a.m. So we've got about 11, 12 minutes to take a break, and then we'll get started again on our next panel. Don't forget, if you're making any social media posts, to tag us at CHOW 2024, hashtag CHOW 2024. See you in about 10 minutes. Thank you.